Dr. Conny Turni, I work at a university at the Queensland University, but I'm not speaking for them. I was told I'm not allowed to say that. I was sprayed in 2022, and ever since I have been fighting this. I was sprayed because without knowledge that they were spraying me. I have complained about the permits, and I will go through that in the talk. So basically, these baits, as already mentioned, are soaked in soybean oil mixed with broad spectrum, and I have to emphasize here the broad spectrum growth regulator, either it's esmesoprene or pyriproxyfen. Now, broad spectrum means that it is not specific for fire ants, but for all arthropods. Now, arthropods is a huge group of animals. There's 80% of the world animals are arthropods. So the claim is that other animals do not eat. Their claim from the fire ant department is that other animals do not eat the baits. However, there's actually a study out there. They looked at 5 native ant species and found that they also pick up their bait. And what they also said, this was a study by them, and you looked at pyriproxyfen ants, which is a distance which the fire ant department uses, and he looked at these 5 ant species, native ant species, and also obviously at fire ants. But in his paper, he said, over the past 10 years, various modifications to the standard corn and oil formulation and distance have been investigated to improve attractiveness for a wider range of ant species than just in the original key target species, the red important fire ant. So we already know that it affects other ant species. So they looked at, basically meat and green ants, black ants. I don't know all these ant species. I'm not an entomologist. So the hypothesis out there by scientists is that by also killing native ants, mass pesticide application reduces competitive burden, thereby enabling fire ants to invade more quickly than they would in the absence of this management. The newly fire ant mated queens selects open, human-altered ecosystem for founding new colonies, and that is because she doesn't have a stinger. She's very open to having predators actually attack her. So they go into areas that are altered, where other ants normally don't like to be. By landing in disturbed habitat, which visits its reduced native ant population, newly mated fire ant queens increase their chances of successful colony establishment. So by actually killing the native ants, we're helping the fire ant to establish. And I unfortunately didn't see the slides, but basically what Sarah already said, in 2001 they detected a nest, and according to their own data, the government's data, they estimated that this has been there for 20 years. So for 20 years we haven't even known that they're there, and then found one nest. Then they went into this wonderful eradication program for 23 years, and found we have now over 15,000 fire ant nests in 600,000 hectares. And they have extended this because they want to come in and do this eradication. So there was a study done in 2017 overseas in America by Melissa Brown for her Masters, and she reported on the situation in America. And she said the eradication of the fire ant has been unsuccessful. On the contrary, the overuse of insecticides has exacerbated the fire ant problem. Sarah shared with me this wonderful letter from Professor Joshua King from the University of Central Florida, and he's an entomologist. And I want to just go through some points here. So he said he's very, very concerned about the toxic prophylactic baiting because that is conducted here. It ignores, as Sarah also already said, it ignores where the fire ants are most likely to occur. Distribution of fire ants across a landscape is very predictable, and ignoring what is known about the dispersal pattern and behavior increases the risk for non-target species to be impacted. So there has been no eradication program has ever succeeded in preventing fire ant establishment and spread over large areas and longer time spans. This is not anecdotal, but has unfortunately been repeatedly demonstrated. And he's also concerned about the widespread prophylactic use of toxic broadcast baits as they may impact non-target ants. And the reduction of the native ant community hastens, not slowing the invasion of fire ants. And like I said, we have seen this already. And there's also if you spread on areas where the fire ant's not even there, there's potential for other non-target species impact on aquatic and terrestrial arthropods and wildlife. That impact is not trivial, he said. So coming back to, let's go back to 2001. In 2001, the minister got a report from the Threatened Species Scientific Committee. And what the fire ant program keeps on telling, it's all terrible, our biodiversity will be affected. So what this comes from, that our biodiversity will be affected, was from a study, from the only study from Natras and Van der Rohe. They reported on the impact on biodiversity. Now the Threatened Species Scientific Committee looked at this, and it was a Mickey Mouse study, read it. So no national listed threatened species were investigated by the Brisbane study. Due to the paucity of biodiversity research currently developed, it is not possible to determine if the current investigation is adversely affecting any listed threatened species. So they sent this to the minister. So there is currently no study available which evaluates the effects of fire ants on listed species or ecological communities. They sent that to the minister in 2001. Well, he obviously didn't listen and just went. That is their evidence that they can spray and we need to get rid of them so urgently. Coming back to what's in the fire ant in the baits. When I work in respiratory bacteria, and I do a lot of research in chicken and pigs. And the normal chicken diet consists of corn and soybean oil. It's in there. So the question is, why would wild poultry not eat this or any other birds? I mean, it's nice food. There was a study done that looked at if birds or chicken eat this. They found that some of it was excreted, but some of it also was in the tissue and some of it was in the eggs. When cattle eat this, and I mean, we're spraying this everywhere. It's on the grass, it's everywhere where cattle are. When cattle eat as mesobrain, it's contained in the tissue as well, and it is in the milk. So there's also a couple of other moves that question the safety of this program. This is from their own website, I shifted the picture, that's all I did. So what does this mean for organic and biodynamic? I should probably say it first, when they first wanted to spray my place again, they told me that it was safe for organic. They didn't say there was a withholding period. They said it was safe for organic. Now, on their website themselves, they say, we have worked with the Commonwealth staff to reduce production impacts for organic operators in our fire ant treatment areas. So the waiting period now for re-entry for organic and biodynamic products treated using products containing an insect growth regulator is now 3 weeks. It was previously 12 months. So I have actually written to them and said, where is the risk assessment? How can you go from 12 months to 3 weeks? They won't show me a risk assessment. They said apparently there was a study done by DEF that looked at the residue. I tried DEF to get that, but I need to have apparently what's it called, a right to information request to get that. The APVM also changed their permit. So the APVM is the one authority, the Australian Pesticide and Veterinary Medicine Authority, that gives these permits. So as methylprim was previously, it said in there, do not apply if fire ant population are not evident and no longer evident. So when I was sprayed in 22, I basically told them you can't spray on my place because there's no fire ants. And I complained to APVMA. What happened there was then, after 2 years, they gave this complaint, which they can handle themselves according to their website. They gave this complaint to DEF. And DEF said, oh, there's nothing to see here, no, it's all safe. And that was it. So I didn't get anywhere with this complaint. But they changed their permit. So now it says, do not apply where threatened invertebrate species and or threatened ecological communities are present, except in the fire ant eradication zone. So it doesn't matter whether you have threatened or invertebrate species or ecological communities. There we can destroy them, but we don't do that outside. Then they come to this claim that it degrades relatively quickly. In the permit it used to say that you have to lock your chicken away for 2 days or 48 hours. Well, there was a study done, I found it, and it looked at pyriproxyfen and S-methylprim. And it basically, they looked at it because they thought, well, encapsulation should hold the bait a little bit longer, the active ingredients, and they wanted to look at UV exposure. And this is for pyriproxyfen. This is a graph for pyriproxyfen. So they only looked for 8.5 days. Don't know how they picked that, but 8.5 days. And it turns out that pyriproxyfen was more stable with relatively little decline. I mean, when you look at their undercover, there's this, which is a black line, there's no decline at all. When you look at the other two, which is full sun and 50% cover, you have 10 to 20% from exposed and semi-exposed areas, 20% loss of the active ingredient. So it's very, very, very stable. S-methylprim is a little bit better in the sense that it actually degrades a little bit. So they looked at Engage and they found that, mind you, undercover, again, it's not degrading at all. This is a solid black line. But after 2.5 days, it starts to degrade and goes rapidly down, and it goes down to 91% for full sun and 75% for 50% cover.
Connie, can I just ask a question
Yeah.
there? In effect, what you're saying is if they drop that all through our forests and it ends up on the forest floor, which is a shaded area, you're saying it just persists there?
Well, that's what the data shows, yeah. And I don't know for how long, because they only did this for 8.5 days. So, okay, well, that sounds okay in a sense. Okay, it will eventually degrade, but when pyriproxyfen degrades, it degrades into 6 metabolites, and most of them persist for more than 30 days in the soil. Now, in this study I was reading, and I have the paper if anybody wants to have a look at that. They call the metabolites A to D. Metabolites C and E and F cause toxicity to soil enzymes. Now, it's not only affecting our animals, it's affecting our soil. There was another study that showed that these degraded products actually affect our earthworms. So it affects the soil and whatever lives in it. So toxicity of the metabolites was far greater than the parent pyriproxyfen. So and then another study looked at this again and said metabolite A, B, C, E, and F are suggested to be very toxic, whereas metabolite D has been counted under the extremely toxic category. So we're thinking that it's only the pyriproxyfen, the whole product, but there's the metabolites, and there's not much out there what they actually do. I mean, we have an extremely toxic chemical, and it's in our environment for 30 days. So what does that do to the environment? What does that do to animals that walk over it? What? There's no studies out there. The degraded compounds of S-mesoprene, such as, I won't name them all because they're very long names, and I'll probably stumble over them. They affected the development of frog embryos, while S-mesoprene itself did not. So what that says is that the metabolites that actually come from them are actually worse than the whole product. So, and no one ever did any studies. I mean, this is a couple of studies I've found, but nobody ever did any studies. What happened to that in the environment? And they might look at pyriproxyfen itself or S-mesoprene itself, but what about these products that are actually more effective than the whole product in itself? So yes, that is actually a very big concern and something that is extremely toxic in our environment. Now coming back to this zone, so they extended this zone and they're going to go inwards, and basically that's their plan. But we have already found fire ants outside this. There was one found in Oki, which is northwest of Toowoomba. So we're already out of the end area. I don't know why they're even doing this. And the problem throughout these years is that they're actually not controlling the movement of soil. The movement of soil, of mulch, of compost, of hay, because fire ant beans love this apparently. And they travel with the soil and the mulch so they travel with them. And they haven't controlled that. So even if they spray everything, if they're not controlling the movement of soil, they can spray them and the fire ant will re-invade. And they are more successful than any, because they haven't got any other ant species anymore. So they will be very successful, and we have seen this. So why are we so concerned about ants? So if you just look at the ants, there's 1,275 described Australian ant species, and they are essential for the ecosystem health. They help with the soil aeration and turnover. They aid in seed dispersal. Some of the seeds of the native trees actually need to have holes in their outer shell, so that they can basically grow. They consume organic material and provide food for other organisms. Ants control pest population by preying on eggs and larvae. So their presence ensures a balanced flow of energy in the ecosystem. So if you have no ants, your ecosystem is already damaged. So you don't even have to damage all the other species or us. Just by getting rid of the ants. There was a study done spraying S-mesoprene on wetlands. Now, this is probably spraying, but it shows how bad the effect of it is. So they sprayed 0.05 to 0.058 kilo active ingredients per hectare. So this is a difference, active ingredients, not just the kilograms. We spraying 0.008 to 0.1 kilogram per active ingredient per hectare, so it's not that much different. So they sprayed over 3 years, 6 times during the spring and summer, at 3 weeks interval, and they reduced the insect density in this area by 57 to 83% in 3 years, amounting to a biomass reduction of 50 to 83% during this test period. So they're doing an enormous amount of damage. So another study was concerned about S-mesochrome and its derivatives because it might be able to affect vertebrate gene transcription. There's evidence that the compounds can bind to retinoid X receptor. This would have developmental effects on amphibians. So we're talking here frogs and frogs, for example, as retinoids act as ligands during vertebrate development. So what that means is they're actively helping to develop limb formation, for example. So there have been studies noticed that their frogs don't have proper limbs. When they sprayed at my place, I had lots of bean frogs. We only moved to this place before they were spraying, shortly before they were spraying. And we had heaps of bean frogs on the shed. They came in the night and were all sitting around the lights. After spraying, we had not a single green fox anymore. So, unfortunately, we never collected the dead frogs. My husband's seen them, but we haven't collected them because we didn't make, again, this connection. We didn't know what they were spraying. It was kind of a long journey. So in summary, this program is most likely to increase the fire ant populations. It will have detrimental effect on other species, other ant species. It's most likely to have a detrimental effect on other species, arthropods, and higher order species, including birds. As this toxin is stored in the tissue and released in milk, it will affect grass-eating animals, and if they're cows, it will in its ends affect us as well. If it is found in the tissue, then it's most likely bioaccumulative, which would mean over the constant spraying for the 2 years, the level will most likely be much higher than the so-called safe levels. The effect of growth regulators are not instant, and we will not see the effects instantly, which means most likely that we won't even notice it till it's way too late. Spraying baits into an area where there are no fire ants will only increase the risk for non-target species. Fire ant program websites tells us that they will do monitoring after the 2 years when they spray, so that this new program is supposed to be for 10 years. 2 years they will be spraying, and then they will, via helicopter and ground crew, monitor the area. So if they can, this sounds very strange, but apparently they can find it by helicopter. So if they can find nests by helicopter, the question is, why can we not just do a targeted approach and destroy the nest found during the survey? Why do we have to spray everything? And there's definitely better ways to control fire ants, ways that do not endanger other species and do not harm the environment, and which will make sure that our health is not affected. Yeah, that's me.